Welcome back. Technical session number 38, which, as we know, this is above technical session number 32. So this falls into the 1002 sphere. We will be talking about troubleshooting Windows and some basic things that we can do to help solve any problems that come up. We are going to be talking about ways to identify common issues that come up with Windows and common troubleshooting applications to use when diagnosing these issues. Be able to describe how to resolve common issues using the appropriate troubleshooting tools, and name which system utility, administrative tool, or command line to use for a given scenario. Yes, we are going to be getting into command line today a little bit. All right. Behavior skills and mindsets we want to keep into account while going through this technical session are persistence. Keep pursuing the solutions to the problems, even after you have handed them off. Develop those tools in your toolkit. Make yourself more valuable to yourself and your teammates. Teamwork. It's not a individual sport. IT is a team sport all the way around. You will be called upon to leverage the skills of your teammates. Some of you are going to be better at security. Some are going to be better at networking. Some of you are going to be better at basic desktop assistance. And we want to be able to leverage all those skills to provide the best customer service experience possible. All right. Basic overview is when our operating system is having problems, it will usually affect the overall operation of the system, and being able to identify these and troubleshoot and solve these common problems will take up a pretty big percentage of the tech issues you have on a daily basis. Remember, we said one of the biggest chunks was user error. Next biggest chunk is going to be software issues, typically revolving around the operating system itself, and then hardware issues will be significantly less frequent. Software itself is pretty complex and multifaceted. Much of the software that we use today, like Windows and stuff like that, may have millions upon millions of lines of code involved in creating these operating systems. So we need to be able to troubleshoot systems, narrow them down to, specific components wherever we can, as well as keep in mind updates that are coming out and understand that when they correct certain issues, it may cause issues in other areas. So we need to be able to work with this as much as possible. Now, as with most troubleshooting, with proper plans of actions and good backups, you can approach most of the problems with confidence. It's much easier to take a little bit of a leap of faith when you know you have backed up all their data to another system. You can have a little more liberty with taking some risks. Not huge ones, but gives you a little more confidence when you're stepping into that arena. Now, common symptoms that require operating system troubleshooting. The proprietary crash screens, also known as the BSOD error, the blue screen of death. Anybody who's used Windows for any length of time has experienced this screen at some point in their life, if not multiple times. Another one we'll be going over is failure to boot, improper shutdown, spontaneous shutdown or restart, device that fails to start or be detected, missing DLL message, service failed to start, compatibility errors, slow system performance, and application issues. All right, first, BSOD. This is typically something that is linked to the kernel itself. When that encounters a problem, it gives it a hard stop. Yes, Rienzi.
The previous screen when it said the missing DLL message, is that like the thing that you told us not to touch?
Yes, the DLL files.
Indeed.
Yeah, that's something that you, unless you have an excessive amount of experience with them, You don't mess with the DLL files.
What do they do? What's their function?
They,
I
Go
got
ahead,
it.
Marvin.
In short, your computer comes with some rudimentary basic information, and the DLL has that information there. And as you put more information on top of it, but if you alter that, you're messing with some of the basic functions of the computer, and that could cause a host of problems down the line. So that's why Kelly said, if you know how to address it, then you're golden. But it's best to leave it alone, because it's pretty much it's a part of the core system of rules that the computer uses.
Yeah.
So choose not to deviate from that.
Does anybody know what DLL stands for?
I yelled it out, but I don't know if anybody heard me.
I think he cut you off.
Oh, okay.
You're welcome.
Dynamic link library.
There you go, Janina. Very good.
Google
Dynamic
still works.
link
Google still works.
library. So
Not Google. It was one of my words from last night.
I'm just joshing. I'm glad that you took that one in.
all right. So BSOD errors. The best part about the BSOD error is down here. Unfortunately, their little circle was slightly off. Right down here, it gives you an error code, which will lead you to what the problem is. So you can write down that code, search it online, and figure out what that code is attributed to, and that will tell you, what is causing your problems for the most part. Now, modern computers tend to boot pretty quick. Sometimes it can kick through the BSOD error pretty fast, and it may be up for like a second or two. Pro tip, if that happens, reboot the computer, videotape it, like, use your phone, tape the screen as it's rolling through. It'll capture that image, and then you can go back, play the tape, and pause it, and then zoom in and then get that error. Because sometimes it moves through pretty quickly. You don't have a chance to write it down. It's just one quick way to do it. So thankfully for this, you look up that error, and it'll kind of tell you what the error is and give you indications on how to solve it. So that's the beautiful part about the BSOD errors. All right. You would go to bug check code reference, and you could put in the code, and it will give you the information you are needing. So this is just one reference you could go to look up these particular errors. BSOD is unique or proprietary, I guess, to Windows. So it's not something you would see on Linux or Macs. Here are some examples of the errors you might have. It could be that, like the NTFS file system, you have high CPU memory usage. Search for the process in the task manager that's eating up a lot of the memory, and then check and be sure what the process is and before you shut it down. You don't want to shut down a core process in task manager, because that causes an inadvertent system crash. But that is one way you can go about doing it if you're using up too much memory. So it gives you the error, what may or may not be missing, and possible solutions to solve it in this library. All right. Tools we can use to troubleshoot BSOD errors. So we just talked about search the error code for the BSOD. You can go to Event Viewer. What is in Event Viewer? Why would that be a good place to go? So what is there? What is kept there? Talked about logs. Very good, TK. Logs. That's where all the logs for your system are kept. And that is a wealth of information if you're researching errors, especially if you know timelines as to when these errors were occurring. You can go back to the logs, search those timelines, and see where the problems might have been originating. Updating windows and patches, because there might be systems patches, hot fixes, or security updates that you may have missed. And as a result, it may have caused an error in the system because you may have not updated the operating system, but have updated applications, and it created an error between the two. System restore. That is where we could go back to previous restore points once we have that established. And it's probably a good idea to set them up to take regular restore points. But if we're going to do a major change, like a big update or something like that, we want to create a restore point right then, so that when we go back, we don't have any lost time. Yes, Evan.
Would your event viewer be like the history for your errors?
Well, the logs would have a history of that. So yeah, you would see history of errors and stuff in the logs. It'd be because everything you do on a computer, doesn't matter what it is, every single thing you do on a computer is recorded in a log at some point. So logs are essentially created for everything. Any keys you hit, mouse clicks, programs you open up, whatever it is, at some point it is recorded in a log. All right. Memory diagnostics tool to check and just see how well memory is functioning in the system. It's always a good one. And then check disk to check your hard drive for any errors that may be coming up in your drives. For a while, you can work around these errors. It may just quarantine those sectors so that it does not read or write from those particular sectors and work around that issue. But if those issues continue to spread, the drive itself will need to be replaced. And sometimes those errors can be fixed through the check disk process. Questions so far? All right. We talked about this a little bit earlier, like after you do a restart, the both side error may itself pop up. If you made any recent changes to the computer, try undoing those changes and then doing another restart and seeing if that clears up your problem. If a device driver itself is causing the problem, use the Windows Explorer to find the program file itself. You can try also uninstalling and reinstalling the device program, see if that clears up the particular issue. And then you can check for archive errors in the Action Center. Where's the Action Center located?
Bottom right,
Which is called?
the notification center.
AKA?
I didn't hear nothing you said.
The notification center.
Very good. Notification area, also known as what?
Taskbar.
No, taskbar is that center part. It is on the taskbar itself, but there's another thing that we call the notification area. What do we call it?
System tray.
System tray. Very good. So yes, you can click on the Action Center there, see if there's any errors that have been logged over time. So if you have any applications crash, it will be notated there as well. Also in your event viewer logs, you can also track it there as well. All right, number 2, failure to boot. Key here is we need to find out whether it's related to the hardware or the software. What is causing it not to boot? So in this one, in the screen, if you can read it or not, it says operating system not found. So it hasn't even started to run the operating system at all. So at that point, we can assume this particular one is hardware related. Or we have the boot order incorrect in the BIOS. What does the boot order tell us?
where to look for the OS first.
Okay. Give me some examples there, Jimmy. You were right on it.
Which drive it's stored in.
Okay. Where else? I mean, because we have the hard drives. Where else could it be?
Or external or a USB or
USB, external, anything else?
mm,
I can think of two more.
on the CPU itself or the processor.
No, it wouldn't be stored in the processor.
The SD card.
Okay, well, yeah, I can go with that one, but I'm still thinking of two here. Think of older technology. How did we used to load up operating systems?
Like a disk, hard disk.
Optical disk. Very good. Now, if I was using a thin client, where would my operating system be?
Would it be possible to on the cloud on a network?
Yes, exactly. Network.
Okay.
Very good, Jimmy. So it could be in the network. And so say if you have a network address for it to go looking for an operating system, say that has changed and you have not updated that in your BIOS. So it's trying to go to the old address rather than the newer address. And so it has an operating system not found, but that's the first place it's supposed to go. If it doesn't find it there, then it should go to the very next thing and look for an operating system. So if you have a USB or an optical drive or hard drive, you can set up a hierarchy in the BIOS for where it goes to look for an operating system to start up from. So, but if you have it in a bad order, it may continue, may come across this error. Now, tools that we can use to troubleshoot the failure to boot. If it doesn't boot because the operating system itself is corrupt, we can boot into the Windows recovery environment or WinRe. And there's a couple different ways we can access this. We can booting from the Windows installation media and then select repair, in which case it will go in and try to fix any of the corrupted or damaged files within the operating system. Using repair your computer option in the advanced boot options, you could also select it from there and then use a system repair disk that was created before the problems had occurred. This, if you don't have a ton of computers, this is a nice thing to have on hand. Questions so far? Yes, Humberto.
Yes, the system restore kit is the same as a restore point?
No.
Is the same information?
No. System repair disk is not the same as a restore point. Because say if you get some pretty nasty malware, it goes into it basically attaches itself to the kernel, does some damage to your operating system, your system or your restore points may not help you because they can corrupt your restore points. And malware, some of the particularly nasty kind, will actively seek out your restore points to corrupt them so that you cannot get back out of the malware itself. So using a system repair disk may be the only option at that point.
And where do you get that disk?
You create it. It gives you an option to create it when you're installing. Would you like to create a repair disk now? And so you can put a burnable CD in there and actually create your own.
Can you put it on something other than a disk if you don't have a disk drive?
I believe now they have the option where you can create it on a USB, yes. Somebody else had their hand up.
I did, but she literally asked the question that I was about to ask if you put it on yours.
Oh, it's amazing when that happens. It's like we're all syncing up. It's great. All right. Next. Other operating systems where we might run into the same issue. On a Mac OS X, if you have a failure to boot in the operating system, you have a recovery tool called OS X that helps you rebuild the Mac operating system. And you can use a key combination to boot into it, Command R to boot into the recovery environment. That enables a full reset, but also gives you other tools that you can utilize in the process. Linux itself offers two boot managers, Grub and Lilo. Overwhelmingly, Grub is the most common. If it gets corrupted or deleted, the Linux won't start at all, and it will show you a missing Grub at boot. All right. I will reiterate, you don't need to be an expert at Linux going into CompTIA exam. Just have good idea about it and have some understanding of basic commands to use while you're in there. Yes, Justin.
Being that Linux is an open source software, it don't matter how many different versions people alternate in it. Will Grub and Lilo still remain the same across the board for that?
Yes, for most of the common iterations of Linux, you'll see like Ubuntu, Kali, Red Hat, stuff like that. They still utilize Grub and Lilo because they are very useful functions to have built in. All right, here is a screenshot of the Windows recovery environment. And it gives you the various options that you can use. You can go into command prompt and operate from there. You can do a full system restore from the recovery partition on your hard drive. You could use a system recovery from an image, which could be a disk, it could be a USB, what have you. And then you could do a startup repair as well. So this gives you a few options you can work with. Obviously, we want to start with the least invasive methods first. All right, if you have installed the disk, this is the screen you will see, and it will give you the option, like, do you want to repair your computer? Do you want to do a full install now? And then at that point, you would pick upgrade or custom. And as we know, custom does a full formatting of the drives and erases everything at that point. But you can do a repair recovery from here. Hint, you may see this as a performance-based question. All right. Improper shutdowns. If you contract some malware, your system may actually begin automatically shutting down and or restarting while you're using it. It could also be other systems issues attached to it. Could indicate hardware issues, setting misconfigurations, and other issues as well. Hardware components that may lead to this might be your memory or RAM, motherboard, CPU, video card, or your system itself is overheating. Say, if you just did some maintenance on the computer and you had to change out the CPU and you forgot to put in that all-important thermal paste. So the system will rapidly overheat at that point and then shut down to try to save itself. Yes, Humberto.
Yes, what is the difference restoring from a restore point versus an image?
Restore point is going to take you back to previous settings, but kind of keep everything in place like your documents and your files. But it's going back to previous settings.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever settings have changed since that restore point, it's going back to those settings. The image would be the original setup settings that you have on those computers, but that image may also, when you're, implementing that image, you may be wiping out all of your files and folders, and those may have to be recreated. So the restore point won't require you to recreate your files and folders. The image likely will.
What would be the advantage of doing that? Like of doing
Doing what?
the image one? It doesn't sound like-
Well, the image is like, once you have created an image for, say, accounting, so you have all the server settings, the security settings, what they are and are not allowed to have access to, as if you would have the computer set up for a brand new employee. So all of that is set. You don't have to go through and flip all those switches and make everything exactly the way it is and worry if you're missing something or give them access to something they shouldn't have. You have what's called a hardened image, or a golden image, one that is good, but they don't have any of the files or all that stuff built onto it yet. And then the restore point is mostly for the fact, like if you install a program and that program starts causing, massive issues in the system, and as it was installed, it changed a bunch of settings to other stuff. You're just going back like 20 minutes, to that previous restore point to reestablish those settings. So one is like a clean slate. The other one is just kind of like going back just a little bit. All right. So when you start to have these errors, you check your event viewer and see what happened right before the crash. Check your logs, see what systems might have been spiking at that point. Any patches that may have come out recently for Windows, go ahead and download those and get those installed. See if that helps, because there might have been a hot fix that was enabled to try to alleviate this problem if somebody else has already experienced it. Use your memory disk diagnostics, check disk/R, which is check disk/repair. So it's going to look for errors and see if they can be fixed. And then if overheating is the issue, you can go into the BIOS setup and check the temperature of the CPU itself. It should not exceed 38 degrees Celsius. Questions so far? All right. Endless shutdowns and restarts. If caught in an endless cycle of restarts, boot into safe mode. It's where you can change the Windows settings and control automatic restarts. What is the benefit of safe mode? Why would they call it that? Yes, Humberto.
Safe mode is a mode that loads just the necessary software so the computer can work. So it loads in low resolution, for example, and doesn't load programs that are not indispensable, that are not a must to use the computer. It's a troubleshooting mode.
Yes, it's troubleshooting mode where you don't have all your drivers and bells and whistles and graphics processing, all that stuff isn't turned on. And I think somebody in this class said it looked a lot like Windows XP because it's using lower resolution processes. It doesn't have everything turned on at the moment, and it allows you to kind of turn these things on one at a time to see what might be affecting it. Yes, Janina.
Oh no, I was gonna answer, but he answered, so.
Okay. All right. Go. Fail to start or not detected for devices. Usually, if that is the case, that involves drivers for the most part. If the device is failing to be detected or not starting at all, it means your system does not have the basic capabilities to communicate with it. Remember, we talked about your system having a list of basic drivers already installed on it. So like you buy an HP 5320 printer and you plug it into your system, and your system has an HP 5000 driver, so it knows that series. So it's able to talk to it just enough to get that basic communication going. And then you can download the drivers and get all the bells and whistles that come with it. If the computer itself does not have those basic instructions for the device, like if it's a new company that's coming out with like a very new device, you may not have those basic drivers already installed in your system. So your system may not recognize that it's even there. In such case, you would need to go out and download those drivers and go ahead and install them. Where you would go to look for this, for the most part, would be in Device Manager. And then you have General tab, which will tell you like the device types, manufacturer, all that kind of basic information. The driver, it displays the event, or the information on the current drivers that are installed in the system. So you can go out and check and see if that is the most recent iteration of that driver. If not, you can uninstall the driver, reinstall it, and see if that'll help. And then possibly, if that's not the case, like the newest drivers don't seem to work with your system, you can roll back to earlier drivers and see if those actually provide you the functionality you need. Questions so far? All right. Next, if the problem is with the driver, an updated driver version can be found on the device manufacturer website. Make sure you're installing the proper one for your operating system. Don't mistakenly download the Windows one if you're used to that, but you now have a Mac. It's not going to work, and it can cause further problems if you do that. Now, if you're going to solve it, if you've updated the most recent driver and you had functionality you don't now, it could be that you've updated the drivers themselves and it's just not working. It happens from time to time. At that point, you can roll back the driver until they have fixed the driver itself in a more recent update after that. And then you can go back in and reinstall the new driver and see if that works. And in Device Manager, you could tell it to boot back into last known good configuration. So the last time the system knew it was operating in good condition, it will boot into that. Questions so far? Good news is there's a lot of labs on this stuff. So I know you guys are excited about more test out labs. So we would, Avery, Marvin, and I would feel remiss if we didn't deliver on that for you. All right, here's a quick snapshot of a troubleshooting report that you would get. If the drivers didn't fully install, you could probably do a reboot, finish installing. Potential issues, it will give you kind of a rundown of where you might start looking when you're being persistent in pursuing these issues. This will give you starting points to start looking for where these troubles may occur. It's hard to give you exact specific steps to take because there are thousands of different devices out there and drivers you may interact with. So it's hard to give you hard and fast, go here, click here, do this. So there are general rules that you would typically follow at that point. So give me that one. There we go. Missing DLL message. Now this one is this, it basically indicates that, like we were talking about earlier, you're missing the dynamic link library file. which is it tells you exactly what is missing itself. Now, various things on your computer use this to kind of be able to operate on a basic level. If they're missing or corrupted, it can cause massive issues with the system as a whole. Now, if it tells you the DLL file is missing, it should tell you exactly which one. Make note of that and its location. And you can, if you want, or if you're able to, you can copy DLLs from another machine if the systems are not, if they're at identical patch levels, like 2 people in HR on the exact same systems, you could copy the DLL files from one and then replace them in another. And that should solve the problem. This would be one of the very, very few times you would interact with the DLL files. You look like you have a question, Avery.
Just thinking.
Uh-oh. Bad news. All right. Let's see here. All right, most applications have small programs called components, smaller parts to the whole that serve the main program. Most of these components within these programs have dynamic link extensions so that they refer back to the library to know how to communicate with these particular applications as well. If it is just on a specific application itself, it may be easier to uninstall and reinstall the application or recover it from a backup from the installation files rather than trying to copy the DLL files. You would typically want to do that like with the operating system only. With an application, something small, it may be easier just to delete and reinstall. All right. One thing you can use is Microsoft Management Console, Snap-in, and they call this Component Services, which is COM+, to register the components. Older versions use the reg server 32.exe to register the components themselves. You don't, mostly it's more of a definitional level. You need to know that at this point. You don't need to understand fully how to use it. I don't think they get that deep in it. Do they, Avery?
If Avery don't answer, I got to answer.
All right.
But
Go ahead,
I
Marvin.
want Avery to answer because Kelly didn't ask me. See, I'm not used to this dynamic. Well, we're still recording. Sorry. Go for it, Avery.
I personally did not see a question on DLL, but that doesn't mean that it's not on there.
Great.
It is on network. On this, not so much. That I didn't see one, but it's just definitionally aware what it is, what it interacts with is pretty much at this level what you need to know. All right. Failure to start. Can be caused by essentially resource conflicts with other applications, excuse me, or misconfiguration of the services itself. So if you're trying to boot up an application itself and it keeps crashing, it's either a misconfiguration of that particular service, maybe it's not set up to run on this particular type of machine, or it's trying to draw too many resources and you already have enough stuff opened up where it can't get the resources it needs and it causes it to crash. First place to start with this, if you have an application that continues to crash, go to Event Viewer, view the logs. This is where you would go to Service Control Manager, which should be underneath it. Check the service console, make sure the service is set to start automatically. And the solution could be, again, with the service or application. It may just be to uninstall and reinstall the application, not the whole system, just the application. So like just Microsoft Excel. All right. Next, compatibility error. So some applications are meant to function on older systems, you know, like Windows 2000 or XP. XP is a really big one for this. And when you try to run them on the newer systems, they don't want to function properly. They don't want to work. If it can be even worse if it's an even older system than those, like NT 95 or 98, which I have not come across any programs that continue to run on these, but in some companies you may come across this. The most common one you'll come across is applications that run on XP, because that was very popular for quite some time. And even to this day, there are companies that begrudgingly had to move off of it, but still maintain virtual XP systems just to run those older applications. Typically, there are two solutions you would look at if applications themselves are not running. Some may even require both measures to make it function. So first is set the application to operate in a mode in which it was created. Like many of them will have a compatibility tab where they will, you can be able to set it to operate in a system to where it was more functional. And the other one is to set the application to run as an administrator. Some older applications can run in the security context of an administrator in order to be able to function. Third way might be creating a virtual machine of the older system so that it can run on it, which is typically what you would do with XP. And in fact, I think some up to Windows 8.1, I think they had run in XP mode. That was an option for applications. If they would not run, you actually had the option to just say run it in XP mode, and it would adjust settings so that it would run as if it was in XP. All right, slow system performance. This is always a tough one because of the fact that partly it comes down to perception. You may think your system is running slower now than it was yesterday, but there's like 100 factors that could be into play, but your system itself is running normally. It could be higher traffic on the network. It could be just other things running in the background. You don't realize that you have, 500 windows open on your taskbar, Marvin. I mean, it just could be a multitude of things going on that you don't realize that you're chewing up these resources. And so your system is running slower, even though technically it's running proficiently. It's your perception that has changed as well. So some of the things you can do if you actually do see slowdowns is you want to do a virus check. So you want to run your virus scanner and see if anything is there. One good indicator that you may have a virus is a overabundance of disk activity. Like it's reading and writing to that hard drive really quickly. So you want to be able to scan it for viruses using a virus program that resides externally, like on a CD or DVD or a memory stick, not internally, because viruses can actually tell the antivirus to not look at them. So they can be specifically made to basically tell the antivirus, skip over me when scanning. So you still have the virus, but your system is telling you everything is fine. Next thing you need to do if you have a mechanical hard drive is to defragment your hard drive. And basically defragmenting is if you have read and written to that hard drive multiple times, over time, the files that you are writing to those drives become scattered as opposed to being clumped together. So defragmenting allows everything to kind of be rewritten to the drive to put all contiguous files together in a single cluster. So that it's faster to read or write from the drives themselves. Unfortunately, you need about 20% or 25% available hard disk space in order to read and write from the drive effectively to defragment. Solid state hard drives do not need to be defragmented. In fact, you can damage them if you try to defragment them. So just something to be aware of. This is defragmenting the hard drive is a mechanical hard drive or HDD drive solution for this particular problem. Check for available space on the hard drive. Once your hard drive starts getting full, it starts to run slower. Ensure that you have the latest updates installed on your system to make sure that they have, any performance problems could also be taken care of, as it may have been a result of a previous update. So the new update may actually correct those issues. Next, other one you can use is Task Manager. And you would use that to determine whether a process is using too much memory or CPU, or if it's simply just locked up. And if necessary, you can end the process there. Now, here's the thing. If you're in Task Manager and you don't recognize that process, run a search for what that process is. Make sure you understand what it is before you kill that process. All right. Okay, application issues. Problems with your application could actually be caused by the application itself, hardware, operating system, not compatible with it, some of the data that you're utilizing, and other applications may actually be in conflict with the particular one you're using. They may be competing for resources. In the case of antivirus, if you have two antiviruses running on a machine, they actually view each other as a virus and will actively try to cancel each other out, using up all your available resources on your machine. So that is something that can happen, because some people think, well, if I got one antivirus on there, man, if I got like 3 or 4 on there running, then there's no way it can get through. Unfortunately, they're viewing each other as viruses. So, and then the most common user error, or ID10T. Now, should remember a lot of this. We were going through it just earlier today. 6 steps, or I think they got 5 here. First one, interview the user and back up the data. Talk to them, see, hey, show me what happened. Let me see if you can recreate that issue and see what the problem was. Okay, well, that's terrible. I'm sorry that happened to you. Let's go ahead and try a reboot and see if that fixes the problem. Even if they told you, I've already done a reboot, say, okay, I understand. I just want to be sure. Let's go ahead and perform a reboot right now. So go ahead and do it. Next, you're gonna look for error messages, the web, logs that might help you. Windows 7 and 8, look in the Action Center. Consult with your coworker, Google, and use Event Viewer to check the logs and see what was occurring around the time that the crashes occurred. Next, consider the data or application itself is corrupted. So the settings within the application may be wrong. It may be set for a previous version. It may be set for a different type of system. So we need to verify that those are correct. And if they are, we're still having those problems, go ahead and uninstall that program, reinstall it, and see if that helps. If that doesn't help, let's start considering outside informations or outside sources. Maybe it's a virus. Maybe you've run out of RAM, and this particular application requires a lot of RAM. Maybe it requires 8 gigs of RAM. You only have 16 in your CPU, and other basic functions require 10. So maybe more RAM needs to be installed. Other applications may be interfering, as we just talked about with the antivirus. interacting with each other. Service itself may have failed to start. Maybe where it was stored on your hard drive, it was stored in bad sectors, so it's not able to actually read the program in its entirety, causing it to fail at that point. You know, you have a corrupted hard drive. And other things running in the background may be conflicting with the applications themselves. Lastly, we want to consider Windows itself might be the problem. I know they are, in their minds, the most amazing, wonderful, beautiful program ever written on the face of the earth. They do have their problems. So maybe they themselves are the problem. It may be you might need to restore some of your Windows systems files. It might be the most recent service pack, like this application ran before, it does not run now. So maybe you have to back up to a previous service pack. Maybe it's updates have come out since then, and you need to move up those updates or download the new updates to get your system back to snuff, and then it will actually run. Next, you can use your system file checker to verify and replace system files if any of them may have been corrupted or deleted. Lastly, you could go to System Restore and perform the King method. Questions so far? Hanging applications. Task Manager, you could use that to end it. So go ahead and hit Control-Alt-Delete, go into your Task Manager, use that to try to end the process. If that doesn't work, we use the task list to locate what is called the process identify, or PID number. Go ahead and we write down that PID number. We go into our command line and we type in task kill and that specific PID number, and it will end any use of that process. We need to be very specific in that, because you can actually use the system name. Like you can say task kill Google, you know, if you're using, or Chrome, if you're using Chrome. Well, here's the issue. What if you have 15 instances of Chrome opened up? It's going to kill all 15 instances. If you use the PID number, you can narrow it down to that very specific instance of Chrome and only shut that down and not interrupt anything else that you're doing. So that is the value of the PID number over the name of the application itself. We know, Marvin, we know. Avery's probably right. All right. Questions so far? Task kill. So that is how you would force quit or force a program to shut down within the command line interface itself. Task list will give you a list of all running tasks within command line. And then down here, it gives you an example of what you would put into your command line in order to make it happen. Here we go. All right. File fails to open. Happens to us every now and again, especially if somebody sends us a file. If you work with people who have both Windows and Macs, you'll understand that Mac doesn't really care about Windows. They'll open those processes up just fine, but Windows hates Mac. So if you send a Windows file from a Mac, Windows doesn't want to open it. So it could be the file extensions themselves are wrong. So it may also be that the file that you're trying to open, you know, you do not have the proper application to open it. So if it's a .txt and you don't have Microsoft Word, it may not let you open it. So you can go to use default programs window to change the program associated with that file extension to try to force it to open. Like I can open up a Microsoft Word document in Notes, and it will open and it will give me the text. It won't have all the fancy fonts and bells and whistles and indentations and footnotes and be real pretty, but I'll still be able to read and view the document if I need to. So there are some workarounds. Now, you also can use the data source open database connectivity tool, which will allow data files to be connected to applications they normally would not use. So you can force it to connect to specific programs. Like if it's a picture, you can force it to be opened in Paint or something like that, rather than opening up in Microsoft. I don't even know what Microsoft uses for pictures. I've been away from it so long. They have pictures in Apple. Does anybody know what the JPEG program is for Microsoft? What is it? No?
You're talking about Paint?
Well, no, Paint would, yeah, that would be the alternate to open the JPEG, because that would let you alter it. Anyway, we can move on. But you can use this to actually force it to use another program to try to open it up rather than the one it is originally attached to.
Might be just called Photos.
Photos, well, there you go. There we go. Part 2, file fails to open. This is where, you know, you can check, you try to use an alternate program to open the file. Like Adobe, I think Adobe is no longer supporting JPEGs anymore. At least not on Macs. They basically said, yeah, we're deleting this because we're not supporting this anymore. You can still open JPEGs, it just won't be through Adobe. And so you can open it up in, say, a Word document or something like that, or Pages or Notes or other files like that will allow you to open the JPEGs up. Or you can even open it as an image. So, questions so far? All right. Am I going to be mean and hand this over to Avery right now? Huh.
It does seem like a real mean thing to do.
Hey man, this is perfect. You got it.
You got it.
All right, I guess I'll take over.
We're right here for you, Avery.
Are you?
For a few minutes.
Yeah, for a few minutes. All right.
You're
So
live.
now, awesome. So now we'll be going over common troubleshooting tools. So some available tools for troubleshooting Windows are going to include our BIOS or UEFI, memory diagnostics, SFC, system file checker, logs, system recovery options, repair disks, Windows 32, 64-bit patches, boot to safe mode, config, and command line. So let's get into it. All right, our BIOS UEFI. So first line tools are going to include our BIOS and UEFI. Most of them include diagnostic tools for multiple components, and keeping the most current versions of firmware on the PC can sideline multiple problems. That being said, you probably don't want to update your firmware that often because you can break your device if power goes out, or at least the computer stops receiving power.
Quick question. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Kelly.
Got a quick question here. Is this a picture of BIOS or is this UEFI? Which one is this?
UEFI.
How do you know?
Because
It looks very modern.
Because it has a nice modern look.
We're jamming somewhere.
Always, Louise, man, always.
He's always rocking to the 80s, man.
Yep, this is our UEFI. I think it even says EFI BIOS utility. Yes, Rinzi.
What makes the UEFI so much more modern than the BIOS? Like, why couldn't they just make them both modern? I don't understand. I'm sorry.
Who wants to answer that?
Good question.
It is a good question.
Is it a good question? I don't know.
I didn't hear her.
Okay, why do they look so different? Like the machine was, I don't know, it just seems like an odd thing. That UEFI would look so different from BIOS.
Alan, answer it for
He
us.
even turned off his camera so that we would call on him.
Not true. I believe the answer is because UEFI was made to replace BIOS.
That is true.
Yep.
That's why it looks more modern.
Yep.
That's part of it. Yeah, it was a replacement of. And why? What was the limitation of BIOS?
I don't know.
Camera back off. Justin.
If I'm not mistaken, the BIOS only had the text interface, but the UEFI has the GUI interface to where you can actually use the mouse within it as well.
That is absolutely true. Yes, you can use the you have the GUI interface, which is the main difference. With the other one, you couldn't even use the mouse at all. You had to use your arrow keys to move around.
Correct. So that was my key difference there.
Okay. So that is a good distinction between the two. Yes, Humberto.
Yes, UEFI incorporates security boot.
Yep, it does incorporate security as well. So that's a nice upgrade they gave us. What about like hard drive space?
The UEFI, is it on the cloud?
Nope, UEFI is on the firmware on the computer itself. The BIOS, I think, can only handle up to, I believe it was 2 terabytes. That was the maximum drive size it could handle based on its programming. So they had to upgrade to a newer system in order to handle larger hard drives and larger systems. With systems coming out now, I mean, it's becoming more and more common. People have hard drives larger than 2 terabytes.
Like computers that have graphic cards, stuff like that.
Well, the graphics card wouldn't really play into it. But it just allows for larger size hard drives for like bigger files, games, things like that. Here, pardon me for a minute.
Good. All right, let's move on to memory diagnostics. So we're going to use one of these methods to start the utility. So you can go into the command prompt window and type the command mdsched.exe. If the Windows desktop will not load, press spacebar during the boot and select Windows Memory Diagnostics from the Windows Boot Manager screen. If you cannot boot from the hard drive, boot from the Windows Setup DVD and click Repair Your Computer, then click Windows Memory Diagnostics. And so what this utility actually does, it will help identify problems with your memory, and it'll also help you eliminate memory as a problem source. So you'll be able to tell whether or not your memory is the problem. If it is, memory can be relatively easy to fix because you just replace. But if it's not your memory, you know, you can check that off your list and move on to something else it could be. All right, into our system file checker, or the SFC. You'll probably see SFC more often than you will see system file checker. So try to associate system file checker to SFC. So the purpose of SFC is to protect system files and keep the cache current. It automatically verifies system files after a reboot to see if they were changed to unprotected copies. We run SFC in elevated command prompt window. So you would type SFC / scan now. And who can tell me what elevated command prompt window means? What does that elevated mean?
Administrator.
Administrator, exactly. You're running it with elevated permissions, which are your administrator permissions. Right. So if corrupted system files are found, you might need the Windows Setup DVD to restore those files. If the SFC won't run using the above command, try this command instead. You would do SFC / scan once. And this will scan files immediately after the next reboot. Any questions with that?
A quick check for understanding. Go for it, Pozo, before I do that.
Yeah, where do you get the Windows setup disk?
So initially, when you first, let's talk about this. You know, this is my wheelhouse here, Pozo. I had a CD case, the big one, filled with discs, because they were given to us by the manufacturer, because they knew that we could use it for clean installs and recovery. So it didn't have to deal with them, especially if you had our extended warranty. But around Vista, there was the advent of most notebooks having CD or DVD burners on them. And when you first get your PC, you had the option to create your own recovery disk. You just had to go to file application, and it was like recovery. And it was an opportunity. You get the opportunity to make one set of recovery disks, and they made you label them. It pops open, you put 1 on it, 2, 3. If you had a DVD, you probably had like 1 or 2. But now to even further go down that road, Pozo, where are you getting, where will you now put the recovery disk? What, because computers don't have the drives anymore. What are we putting on? Scarborough, Justin.
USB.
Yep, you got it now. You can download and have it on a actual USB file. So it's so many different ways, Pozo. But it started off, they came with the computer. They were labeled. You had one that said recovery, and the other one said drivers. It was like 2 or 3 disks. HP, Dell, whoever you're dealing with. Now I still have a couple. Come think about it. Then next, the computer was able to create your own disk using the recovery setup, which was built in, was an application built into the PC. Now keep in mind, you also have a certain part of your C drive partition for if if a hard drive is still good, you can use the hard drive to recover the PC. But for this particular instance, it's saying that hard drive may be corrupted, or that may be an issue there, and you have to pull it from somewhere else. You can always, like right now, when I get off the call with you, do you guys see my jump drive here? I got a jump drive. This has Windows 10 on it, and I have I have PCs that I have to do a clean install on. What's the odds of that, Avery? That's one of my jobs.
Mhm.
Taking me back. So I have to do clean installs on them and make sure that they have the applications that we use here as a side project and job. So I don't need disk anymore. And I'm glad I don't need a disk because I don't have a disk drive on most PCs anymore. I would have to use like a USB option. So the fact that we have this and this is so handy, this is what we have now. I hope I covered that really well.
So we can use the CD setup or a restore point is the same.
No, now a restore point is not the same. The restore point will get you out of a jam if your computer is having a issue that you may have created by the addition of adding software or some type of corrupted driver. You can use it. But if your hard drive is failing or if the issue is significant enough where you can't identify a fix, that's when you'll use the recovery disk. Or if you don't want to deal with trying to know if you fully remediated that virus, if you feel like it may still be lingering, because sometimes they are a bugger to get rid of. You may say, it's not worth it. Let me go ahead and do a clean install with my recovery disk or with the recovery partition built into my hard drive. And you won't have those issues anymore. So it's almost, is at your discretion. And you know how I feel, Bozo. You know, I don't play. It can be something simple and we recover. But you don't have to. That's just is almost your preference. And I would say from what we're doing right now, we're giving you the tools to go least evasive before you go the most aggressive approach, which is my approach.
Yep. Justin, quick question and then we'll move on.
Yeah, so being that you used to do that, Marvin, like, do you or every one of y'all have the enterprise product key to where I can get access to Windows 10 Pro so I can get access to like virtual?
Man, I had to pause him. I had to mute him. Justin, what are we, Justin?
My bad.
Okay, all right. Sidebar,
So,
man. Sidebar. We'll have talked about, sidebar. But I mean, in short, no. But I'll tell you his ways. Sidebar. I'm gonna hold you. Hold me to that. We'll talk about that.
All right, let's talk about logs. Let's move on. All right, so logs. All operating systems collect information about events that have occurred that are stored in log files. There are typically log files for different components, such as security logs, an application log, or a system log. And these files can be used to troubleshoot operating system issues, and events related to this are usually within the system log. The log files can be found on Event Viewer. So that's when we go in and see like when an issue happened. It'll have it listed when the event happened, what the event was, so that way we know what we're looking for and how to approach it. All right, so some system recovery options. So these are the different things we can do. There's startup repair, system restore, system image recovery, Windows memory diagnostics, command prompt. So you can click on those to go in there and try to fix the system that way.
Did you catch that? 1 second, Avery. Pozo, do you see on the advanced options, there's a system image recovery? In those same options, that will be a place where you can burn your disk. So like I said, it was built into the, they realized why give you this? Why spend money on making this when we have the technology to give you that information via just a quick file, and you do it on your own. You do it at your own discretion. So I just wanted you to catch that. It would be in some level of place right on this particular slide. Go for it, Avery, my bad.
You're good. All right, so system recovery options are startup repair. So this is a utility that serves as a do-it-all option. So when run, it performs a number of repairs that will include repairing a corrupted registry by accessing the backup copy within the hard drive. It'll restore our critical boot files. It restores critical system and driver files. It will roll back any non-working drivers. It'll uninstall any compatible or incompatible service packs and patches. It'll run the check disk command, and it'll also run a memory test to check the RAM. So startup repair fixes almost any Windows boot problems. So it'll do it all in one for you. Any questions with that? All right. So then we go into system restore. System restore is a utility that enables us to go back to a point when the computer was working properly.
Please turn
So
it
you can see
on if
within our
you don't.
system.
Please turn it on if you don't have it turned on, because it's not turned on. They say that it is, but it's not. So
Yep.
go in there, make sure you turn it on so you can get a restore point. So you can ensure that if you add something, I always do that. If I'm going to add a new application, I'll go there, see if I have what's my recent restore point. And if it's recent enough, I won't have to deal with creating a new one, but I want to be able to do it before I load anything, just because I need to roll it back to that previous time.
Yep, and it'll tell you the date and time when the restore point was created. So 3/25/2012, 3/23/2012, and all at different times throughout the day. So you know exactly what you're going back to. Gives you a little description and the type of restore point. So like we installed something, there was a critical update, we installed something, critical update. So if you have an issue after you installed Screenshot IT Enabler, you can roll it back to when you just installed the Motorola driver installation, and it'll get rid of that issue you had with that other install. All right, our system image recovery. It's a utility that enables us to restore the system from an image backup.
Uh-oh.
Oh.
Pozo, this is what I'm talking about right here. Well,
Yep.
It's still E, so we're still in the right place, but this is exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm glad we got a picture, a representation of it on screen.
Yep.
Yes, out the box, I would set up a computer. That was so we're one-stop shop. Diaz, you come in, you see a computer you want. Of course, I'm gonna upsell you a little bit, but that's besides the point. You're gonna get a good computer, and I'm gonna say, hey, go and get some lunch. I'm gonna go ahead and set this computer up for you, and I'm gonna create your recovery disk, so you don't have to deal with it since you don't get them anymore. Like I was telling Pozo, so I'll make sure that they're labeled and they come with the computer, and all you have to do is when you get home is plug it into. Put in your wireless information or plug it into the Ethernet. Back then, it was so long ago, it was a wired router. So you plug it into your wired router and you can go. But I already have your printer set up. I had your drivers loaded. I would make sure that you'd have to do anything. So that was a part of a package. $99.99. Okay, let's go. Hey man, it's taking me back. That was fun times, man. I had a really good time. I was young, not a care in the world, no kids. We're still recording.
Making all the money.
It wasn't a lot, but it wasn't a lot of things going out. You know, I only had like a cell phone bill and splitting rent with the roommate, like fun time.
All right, let's talk about some repair disks. So this allows us to recover a computer and bring it back to the point where it was when it was new. It can only be used to reinstall the operating system on the PC. The Windows Backup and Restore tool allows you to create a system repair disk within Windows 7. To create a system repair disk, we followed these steps. You're going to open up Backup and Restore by clicking the Start button, clicking Control Panel, and clicking System and Maintenance. And then you can click Backup and Restore. So you can, well, it won't really pull up for me right now because I'm presenting. But if you go into your Start button, you can follow those steps and it'll take you to Backup and Restore. In the left pane, you'll click Create a System Repair Disk and then follow the steps. If you're prompted for an admin password or confirmation, you're going to type the password or provide confirmation. So you can go and do it now if you'd like. Not right now because we're in class, but if you wanted to go create you a little repair disk, you could do that.
Not right now, but right
Yeah.
now.
All right. Windows 32 and 64-bit patches. So some guidelines when reading error messages related to Windows. The term x86 refers to 30-bit CPUs and operating systems, and x64 is going to refer to 64-bit. All CPUs in PCs today are hybrid processors. So the term x86 or 64 refers to these processors and also may refer to a 64-bit operating system. The term IA64 refers to a 64-bit Intel processor. The term x64 is 64-bit operating system. So for 32-bit installation of Windows, we must get a 32-bit patch, a device driver, or an application. For a 64-bit installation of Windows, you must get a 64-bit device driver, and the application can be a 32-bit or 64-bit application. But if you have a 64-bit driver or processor, you're going to want to go ahead and get the 64-bit application. As long as you're able to run it, you might as well. All right, boot into safe mode. So safe mode starts up Windows, but loads only very basic and non-vendor specific drivers for mouse, keyboard, storage, and system services, along with a 800 Vista 7 or a 1024 by 768 for 8 and 8.1 resolution monitors. And I'm talking about Windows operating systems, if that wasn't clear, Windows Vista and 7 for the 800 by 600 and Windows 8 8.1 for the 1024 by 768. Once in safe mode, tools such as Device Manager can be used to locate and correct the source of a problem. So this is where you go to keep yourself from connecting to the network. But you can do safe mode with networking or safe mode with command prompt as well. Any questions, concerns? If not, we'll move on. Almost through it. So now we're on msconfig, and this utility helps us troubleshoot startup problems by allowing to selectively disable individual items that normally are executed at startup. Highly recommend you do this, especially if you have a slow boot up and you want to make it go by a little faster. If it's a program that you don't need running, you might as well disable it from running until you want it to run. Like, you don't need Skype to come on as soon as you turn on your computer. that weighs your startup. It weighs on your startup super heavily. So disable that and your computer will start up a lot faster. And then you can start it up when you're ready to use it. I didn't know about that for the longest time. And anytime I would download something and it would ask me if I wanted to start it on startup, I would be like, yeah, that way it'll be ready for me to use as soon as I'm on my computer. I didn't realize it would just weigh down my startup time.
I was just asking this the other day.
Were you to us
Yes.
or just period?
Yes, yes.
What did we say? Did we answer you appropriately?
Yeah, I
Yes,
was told
yes,
not.
because we're recording. We're
Saying,
recording.
he's saying the opposite of what I was told the other day. See, today he's saying that it slows down your startup. Because I had asked that if certain things are running with the startup, does it slow it down? He just said yes. So okay.
Well, okay, so this is why, like Avery put, Skype and some other things will want to start up each time you start your computer up. And you may not even use Skype. You may not have to use Zoom every time you start up. So the fact to have that application go through a process of loading while the computer's starting up is unnecessary. One thing that loads up for me that I haven't turned off yet is Discord, which is another app kind of like Slack. And it's so sneaky because when I installed it, I really didn't even see anywhere where it's asking me to do it, but it ended up doing it, so you got to watch that. And some of it's called bloatware. It's just stuff that's on the computer that wants to start up. When those teams, exactly, some things just don't want, it may ask, let me tell you how it works, Mark. It may ask, but it's so subtle with it that you're not even paying attention. It's not even the box to check to undo it. It's kind of like obscure and hidden. What's that word we learned today? Obfuscation. Y'all know which one I'm talking about this morning. Okay, all right. It'll pull one of those numbers on you. So, but it is a way to clean up your startup, and you'll notice a difference in how quick your computers go from power on to ready to use, with some of those things not running, for sure.
So where was I? It works in most versions of Windows, although the interface window is slightly different among those versions. There's no menu command for this utility, so you'll just use start, run, you'll type msconfig and press enter. And that'll bring up this screen.
And do we pull it up in the search bar?
I'm going to be honest with you. I
not sure.
go through Task Manager.
Right.
and
Okay,
and
that I'm used to doing
get
it
to
that
my
way
boot
too.
that way.
You
Right.
can. In the
But you
type
can
here
do
to
it.
search, you can type in msconfig, and once you type it, that utility will pop up, and
Yep.
then it will give you an option to go to startup, and you'll be able to see those tools for sure.
Yeah. But there are a bunch of ways to get to it. As Marvin likes to say, there's more than one way to skin a cat.
Which, why are you doing that? But yes, supposedly there is.
Because they have 9 lives. So you got to do it multiple ways or you'll get
One or
bored.
two skinners it can handle, huh? I guess.
Yeah.
Awful. That's
All right, let's move on to command prompt. So the command prompt allows us to run multiple utilities. It is launched by typing CMD at the run prompt on the start menu. So if you type in CMD and hit enter, it'll open up your command prompt. You can also type in command. Do you need to type command prompt? I just do CMD now.
just
So I
CMD.
well, I'm just saying like, so if you type command prompt, it'll run it, or if you do CMD, that'll also.
It may not even let you type the whole command. It'll come up before you get it in. I just type COM and command prompt app will pop up because it knows what you're using it for.
Yeah. No worries, Janina and Justin. Can't you just use PowerShell. You can
Depends
use
what-
Power.
And it depends on what you're doing too. If
Mhm.
you want to use PowerShell versus just going here. But yeah, I see what you're saying, Avery. You can.
Yeah. All right. So when used as an administrator, provides privileges to make changes when it is called elevated command prompt. So I want it over here.
What you want to do?
I was trying to get the search bar to come back over here, but
Well, all we see is the
oh,
near
yeah,
prompt.
I know that's what you see. Oh well, it's not meant to be. So if you type in command prompt and the app comes up, if you right click it, you can run it as an administrator.
Yeah. Or if you type command and you see it pop up before you click on the app, option to run as administrator pops up as well.
Yeah.
Is that the only way you can do it as an administrator?
No,
No.
but if you wanted to make significant changes that will require admin privileges, you will need to run, but you can run it, just run it normally and still do things. So
Mhm. Right. So some optional updated slides for additional common symptoms that require OS troubleshooting. Proprietary crash screens, blue screen of death, failure to boot, limited connectivity, spontaneous shutdown restart, device fails to start be detected, missing DLL, services failed to start, compatibility errors, slow system performance, application issues. So some additional content. So when you have limited connectivity issues, the Windows operating system will display a yellow triangle on the icon for the network in the lower right corner of your screen. And this typically means you do not have access to the internet. So the first step you're going to want to do is to run ipconfig all. Let's see. So ipconfig/all. That's going to pull up a bunch of good information about your system and our IP configuration. So you're going to review the info to ensure that you have a valid IP address. So IPv4 address, that's what I got going on right now. You can ping the local host. So ping 127.0.0.1. And that'll.
hey, are we supposed to be saying what you're doing?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm showing them.
No,
Showing
you're
them
not.
what it looks like.
You're not. We still
Huh?
see. We still
You don't see my command prompt?
You see the nearby, sir.
Oh no. Okay, well look, I was showing you guys
I know you were. I
all,
know. I can tell how you was
all
typing.
this stuff. It's
You
good
was going to
stuff.
work.
It's a shame that you're missing this.
Unshare
right.
and reshare, and I bet it'll come up.
So
Share the
stop
desktop,
share.
top left corner. That probably will give
I
it
don't
to
want
me.
to share my desktop,
Okay.
but
What you
we're
got
gonna
going
do
on?
it.
What you got going on there?
All right, can we see the command prompt now?
We can.
Okay, so ipconfig/all pulls up a bunch of information. You guys can do this yourselves, and you can look at the IPv4 address, your subnet mask, your IPv6, lots of good information. You can ping your loopback, which is 127.0.0.1. So that pings your loopback address. You can check to make sure everything's good there. You can ping your default gateway, which is your router. So that's my default gateway or your router. You can ping that. You can ping another device on the network. You can ping hosts. Yep, good addition, Mark. You can also ping hosts on the internet, such as Google's DNS server. So if you can't access Google, but you're connected to the internet and you ping it and you're getting all these replies, then it could just be that your DNS is messed up and you got to go, oh, we got an update for you another time. So yeah, that's some command prompt.
Vulnerable to exploits now. Justin, did you have a question, sir?
Yeah, real quick, what are you actually doing when you ping something?
You are wanting to know if there is a connectivity to that item. You want to check if there's a connection. So Mark is telling me, Marvin, man, I can't get to the internet. I can't get to somewhere on the network. For some reason, I can't see certain things. I'm like, well, let's see what's going on, Mark. Go to ipconfig all. Then I would tell him to type in, if this is, I'm over the phone, like I'm not at the elbow is what we call it. I'm on the phone. I'm like, go ahead and type in 127.0.0.1, ping space 127.0.0.1.
And make sure you hit enter.
Make sure you hit enter.
When you're typing these commands.
Who needs to know that? Somebody in here needs to know that, I think. I don't see him. But either way, you hit it. And if it does not go through, we know there's a problem with either his network interface card, the connection between the wall and his computer. If that it could even be that outlet is not, the drop is not hot. But if it goes through, then I know there's a connectivity problem between him and the site. So that's the first step. You need to know where your problem is. Is it away from the computer or is it the computer itself? And say, for instance, it was the computer itself. Guess what I got to do next? Maybe that IP address, since it's on the network, has been assigned to somebody else, especially if we got a DHCP server. You get assigned IPs. You don't get static IPs. And maybe somebody else took Mark's IP. I gotta go IP config, release, and then renew, which will give him a new IP address. And now he's able to move about the network and the internet without any issues. Did I know this when I was at Circuit City, Justin? No. If you couldn't get to the internet and I couldn't figure it out, you know what I was doing, $149.99. But that it could have been as simple as me IP config release, meaning clearing that IP address that he has, and then renew, giving him a new IP address. And now it's working. It could have been as simple as that. Now I would have made you pay for that too, but it wasn't going to be $149.99. It probably $19.99.
So basically, you just testing the client against the network, trying to figure out exactly where the problem lies.
Yep.
Exactly.
If it's the internet that's coming in, or is it the computer itself? Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Exactly.
Good question. All right. So this next one is the lab sim links. And then objectives revisited. So we should be able to identify common issues that come up with Windows and common troubleshooting applications to use when diagnosing the issue. We should be able to describe how to resolve common issues using the appropriate troubleshooting tools. And we should be able to name which system utility, administrative tools, or command line to use for a given scenario. Any questions? Concerns?